Joseph Armand Gerard Fernand Villeneuve. His skill and dedication as a military aerobatics pilot, the professionalism of his work in aircraft accident investigation and prevention, and his long-standing contributions to the Canadian Air Cadet gliding program have resulted in lasting benefit to Canadian aviation. Joseph Armand Gerard Fernand Fern Villeneuve was born at Buckingham, Quebec on July 2, 1927, and his interest in aviation developed at an early age. He joined the Air Cadet program in 1943, and following his experience, he worked hard to pay for flying lessons. He obtained his pilot's license in 1946, and within 2 years had his commercial license. In June 1950, he joined the RCAF and trained as a military pilot. The following year, he was assigned to 441 Squadron at Saint-Hubert, Quebec, flying the F-86 Sabre. In 1952, the squadron was moved to Loughlingham, England. Villeneuve's innate abilities as a pilot and his desire to excel led to his initial involvement in the squadron's aerobatic team. They participated in numerous official flight demonstrations in Britain, including one attended by Prince Philip on May 21, 1953. In 1954, Villeneuve joined 431 Squadron at Bagotville, Quebec. He was authorized to form a 4-pilot demonstration team, which was invited to perform at the International Air Show in Toronto. The team later toured Western Canada, where attendance records were broken everywhere they went. The T-33 Silver Star trainer was used while he was on staff at the Advanced Flying Training School at Portage la Prairie, Manitoba in 1955. He accumulated over 1,000 hours of instructional time on this aircraft. He was then assigned to the Central Flying School in Trenton, Ontario in 1957, where he established procedures which made forced landings more successful. He also carried out T-33 tumbling trials to determine the effect of elevator trim settings on recovery procedures. His experience and competence warranted his appointment as Jet Flight Examination Officer. 1958 marked the 35th anniversary of the RCAF and the 50th anniversary of powered flight in Canada. Villeneuve was approached by Air Force Headquarters and instructed to form an official aerobatic display team. This would be called the Golden Hawks.
Always there were last-minute discussions, minor changes to be made in consideration of wind and weather. And then it was time to move.
Villeneuve went on to train, choreograph, and lead the Golden Hawks for 2 show seasons during 1959 and 1960. The exploits and impact of the RCAF Golden Hawks are well known, as is Villeneuve's association with them. His team performed 134 air displays throughout Canada and the U.S., establishing a standard for team aerobatics that is still upheld by current military aerobatic teams. His unrelenting passion established Villeneuve and the Golden Hawks as an icon of Canada's jet age. At the end of the 1960 Golden Hawk season, Squadron Leader Villeneuve was transferred to the position of Chief Ground Instructor at No. 1 Operational Training Unit. On November 7, 1960, during a routine training exercise, he was involved in an air incident that would again show his professional integrity. When the engine of his Sabre failed, he remained with the aircraft, ensuring that it did not crash into the houses below. However, Villeneuve did sustain significant injuries when the Sabre crashed into a field. For his courage and determination in avoiding a more tragic accident, he was awarded the Air Force Cross, which was presented on July 16, 1961, by Governor-General Georges Vanier. In the early 1960s, the RCAF was bringing the CF-101 Voodoo and the CF-104 Starfighter into service. While still recovering from his injuries, Villeneuve was appointed Staff Officer for Flight Safety at Air Defense Command. Being in charge of accident prevention at this time was a challenging task. However, with his knowledge of aircraft and operating procedures, he was able to assist in a smooth transition. In 1965, Squadron Leader Villeneuve was appointed Commanding Officer of 434 Squadron, flying CF-104s at Zweibrücken, Germany. He was promoted to wing commander in 1967 and soon assumed command of 430 Squadron, also at Zweibrücken. His squadron maintained an operational capability second to none, making a significant contribution to the Western Cold War posture. In 1969, he attended the Canadian Forces Staff College in Toronto, and upon graduation in 1970, he assumed command of 414 Electronic Warfare Squadron in Ottawa. This position had its own challenges, as he had to manage deployments of aircraft that were constantly on the move around the country and into the U.S. He also oversaw recurrency flight training for RCAF pilots on staff tours at the National Defense Headquarters. In 1972, Villeneuve headed the Accident Investigation Branch of the Directorate of Flight Safety in Ottawa. Here, he was highly praised for his work in not only investigating the causes of accidents, but in finding ways of preventing them. He understood both human and aircraft factors very well and how the two interacted. Following 4 years in this capacity, he was assigned to CFB Bagotville as Base Operations Officer, in which he flew the CF-101 Voodoo operationally with 425 Squadron. 3 years later, in 1979, Villeneuve was posted to CFB North Bay as the Base Administration Officer, where he maintained his currency status on the T-33 until his retirement from the regular force on July 2, 1982. He was a high-performance jet pilot for over 30 years, with a total military flight time of 8,317 hours. Villeneuve and his family relocated to the Trenton area, where in 1983 he re-emerged in uniform as a reservist. He assumed command of the Central Region Gliding School in support of the Canadian Air Cadet Gliding Program. While in this position, he introduced formal exercises for each training flight, which greatly improved the level of training and the standardization of instruction. By 1998, Villeneuve had overseen more than 400 air cadets undertake training. He remained on staff as a glider and tow pilot instructor until he retired from the reserve force in 1992. His military service totaled 42 years, but he then stayed on for 10 more years as a civilian instructor. Fern Villeneuve is an active member of the Air Cadet League and a director of the Ontario Provincial Committee. He and his wife Linda live near Belleville. He continues to fly his own aircraft, a Swift, and assists in the test flight programs of numerous amateur-built aircraft. As well, he's often called upon to share stories about the great Golden Hawks. The Royal Canadian Mint recognized Villeneuve's contributions to Canada's aviation history in 1997 by minting his cameo likeness on a $20 silver and gold coin depicting the F-86 in its famous Golden Hawks roll. WC retired Fern Villeneuve was inducted as a member of Canada's Aviation Hall of Fame at ceremonies held in Montreal on May 27, 2006.